walking the serpentine path, following the footsteps of the ancestors, walking the serpentine path, making our way back home. Hey ya, hey, hey ya ho, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya ho, hey ya, hey, hey ya ho. Following the serpentine path, life. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Serpentine Path podcast. My name is Claire Wadiasid, and I am a student midwife, spiritual counselor, multidisciplinary artist, founder of Sage Femme Womb, and your guide on this serpentine path of life. Together, we'll dive deep into all things related to plant medicine, ancestral reconnection, intergenerational healing, womb sovereignty and bodily autonomy, rites of passage and initiation, time travel, shape-shifting, dimension hopping, the reclamation of our collective earth-based practices, and the ongoing, never-ending cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Welcome to the serpentine path, where the ancestors have called us back to. Let's start at the end and find our way back home together. Hello everyone. Before we get into this episode, I want to just drop a quick reminder that I am going to be teaching a free class called The Current State of Men and Women, Why Relating Feels So Hard, next Wednesday, May 20th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. It is a co-ed class. Men and women are welcome. I would love to see you all there. It will be following along the theme that I have been speaking to over the past couple of episodes around spiritually intact sexual education and what we're going to be getting into in today's episode. So without further ado, let's get into it. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Serpentine Path podcast. My name is Claire Wadiasid. I'm your host, and today is going to be a solo episode. And today's episode is a little bit different in that I am still following this theme that I have been weaving over the past couple of episodes, all about spiritually intact sexual education and what that looks like and how that impacts our relationships between men and women. But today's episode is specifically addressed to the men. And I know that the vast majority of my audience are women. And so I come to this episode with a very, very deep prayer and deep trust and faith that this will find men who need to hear this, men who want to hear this, men who are open to hearing this, men who are walking a really beautiful, strong, powerful path in their life, men who care for and tend to the most vulnerable members of their community, that being the women, the children, and the elders, and trusting that these words will find you wherever you are in time and space and place. I also come to this conversation, this episode with you, my beautiful dear men, with lots of wounding that I won't go too deep into, but I think it's important to offer some context as to what my path of womanhood and relationship to masculinity has looked like up until this point in my life, which is that I am a survivor of a very, very high degree of sexual abuse, specifically, predominantly at the hands of men, also at the hands of some women as well. I've been on both sides of the spectrum with that. And there's been other aspects of abuse as well, physical abuse, financial abuse, emotional, verbal, spiritual, whatever. But I come into this with a pretty intense past of receiving a lot of violation and abuse at the hands of men and warping that and distorting that in my own way to then enact a lot of feminine manipulation towards the men that I have been in relationship with. And it's been a deep process of healing that and clearing that and cleaning that, not only from my lived experience, but from my entire blood lineage that I walk with, and also from being able to see that in the collective consciousness in the ways that men and women are currently relating, what we've come from, what we're on track for, and what is being called forth within our relationships, both our romantic and intimate and sexual relationships with people that we are walking a life path with, that we are potentially co-creating marriages and families with, but also the way in which we are engaging on a platonic level of brother, sister, mother, father, child, elder, grandfather, grandmother, aunties, uncles, nieces, nephews, our friends, our community members of the opposite sex, how we're relating with one another, and all of the pain that is alive there. And so when I was feeling into this episode and what I wanted to share with the men, what really was coming forth within me was actually sparked a couple of weeks ago when there was this big CNN article that came out about this supposed online rape academy, which was essentially a porn website called motherless.com, which is like such a clear naming of what happens in a motherless society, which was that all of these men on this porn site were drugging their partners, their wives, and then sexually assaulting them in their sleep while they were passed out and uploading these videos to this porn site. And there was also a separate Telegram group where men were trading, I guess, tips and tricks of how to successfully drug and sexually violate their women. And when I heard about this, I mean, obviously I was horrified because it's horrifying. And I also just wasn't surprised. And I don't think that it really impacted me on like a super deep emotional level, simply because I've been in the world of understanding the sex industry and the pornography industry and the tendrils that it latches into our bodies and our psyches and our spirits and our lineages and our ways of relating for many years. This has been like a deep, deep study of mine, I would say, through all of my 20s. I've been exploring the darkest aspects of this underworld of sexual distortion and violence. And predominantly, that comes from the fact that I'm a survivor of so much sexual abuse from age 6 to age 26, so 2 decades of my life. And so the deepest aspects of my healing have been to go into that darkness and understand, why do people take this from other people? Why is there so much violence and coercion and manipulation and force around our sexual life force energy, that someone would take that from me when I was 6 years old or 12 years old or 15 or 16 years old, or, throughout my 20s? Like, why? And so when I saw this article come up, like, truly no part of me was surprised. No part of me was like, oh my God, how could men be doing this? No part of me was like shocked that it was, on a porn site. Like, no part of it was, I felt like, new information. But it did bring up a layer in the collective consciousness, this on top of, the Epstein files that we have been um, sifting through over the past couple of months since they've been released. And what I'm feeling is so much deep, 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 deep rage and pain and sadness from women. And just this demand towards men, like, fucking do something, do something, do something. Like, why won't you change this? And I was really fortunate to be able to join essentially a town hall meeting, an online town hall meeting, called by a couple of different male educators and men who are deep in the world of men's work and who essentially came together and were like, okay, let's talk about rape culture. Like, what is going on here, right? And there were five men who were speaking that I got to listen into. And I mean, beautiful things came up in that conversation, but a big part of it that came up that I feel is very true is that men are like very frozen in their ability to like really take action against something this big because it is something that happens between, two people or sometimes one woman and multiple men. But it's such a big collective wound that needs a big cultural shift behind it. And so, in that way, men feel quite like, well, I don't really know what to do. I mean, I'm not raping women, right? And so, what else do I do from here other than just not rape women? To which I'm like, yes, wonderful that you're not raping women. Absolutely great. That's like the baseline. But what else is there, and what role do men have in shifting the consciousness around rape culture and calling their brothers into this work? And before I get into like the direct actions that I would offer to men, I just want to name that every single one of us, regardless of our race, the language we speak, the continent that we come from, what our ancestors looked like, every single one of us has moved through many different waves of colonization and enslavement and disconnection from our indigenous life ways that we all once lived in. And one of the ways in which colonization works is that there are many wartime tactics that are utilized, one of which is the rape of women. And what we see time and time again throughout different cultures is that a colonizing, dominating force will come in, will take over, a specific groups of people. And one of the things that they do is that they will rape the women and they will make the men watch. And men, in watching this, it creates this imprint inside of them of, I was a failure because I could not protect my woman. I couldn't protect my sister, my wife, my daughters, my mother from being violated in the worst way that any human can be violated, much less any woman, right? And so there is this deep, horrendous wounding, not only of the women, but men really harming men through harming women. And it creates this shut off in men, this disconnect within them, this sense of like failure and inability to have acted, to have taken direct action against perpetrators who are going against the sacredness of life, which that you never take that from another person. And so I name that to just recognize that I think men are moving through like thousands and thousands of years and multiple generations of men being so emasculated and disempowered and told that they are not allowed to protect the women that they are meant to protect. And so when we look at where we are now, it's like, well, yeah, men are frozen. They don't know what to do about this because it's not only activating all of their own fears within their lived experience, but it's activating so many intergenerational ancestral fears. And so when I see the work that men have to do, like it is so much deeper than just the individual healing that we're all doing, right? And that you all are doing, that's being called of you. It is really, truly the breaking of so many intergenerational chains of men who came before you who were not allowed to protect their women, who couldn't protect their women. And now you're at a time where there is a different degree of protection that you can offer, and there's still ancestral stuckness in your spirit that is preventing you from mobilizing, from moving forward, from activating, from really showing up as the true warriors that you all are, that we believe you to be, and that we need you to be. So, in naming all of that, the last thing I'll say before I get into it is the remedy, right, for toxic masculinity, violent patriarchy, male domination over women, is not less masculinity, it's more healthy masculinity. And there's many aspects to healthy masculinity that I'm not going to get into, but one of which, healthy masculinity, is taking direct action, is seeing what is going on in your field, receiving the data and information about the truth of reality, and finding a way to activate within yourself the ability to move forward, take action, and make a change. And so, in offering this episode, these are like 5 direct, specific actions that men can take to shift rape culture. So, the first thing that comes up that I'll speak to, which I know is a very, very deep wound for men, many of which like aren't even conscious of. And when we're talking about the United States, the reality is that the vast majority of men here in the United States were circumcised as young boys, as baby boys. And most men don't actually even hold the consciousness and understanding around how traumatizing circumcision is as a form of, I view it, sexual violence, genital mutilation, and rape culture. I personally really do feel that rape culture begins with infant male circumcision. It's one of the roots of where it begins. And the reason for that is that for a very long time, it was this idea that babies don't feel pain. Babies don't have pain receptors because they don't have fully developed brains. And so within the medical industrial complex, they were circumcising young boys without any kind of pain relief. They were also doing at one point like open heart surgeries on babies and like doing crazy stuff to babies without giving them any kind of pain relief. And so for young boys, what we're looking at are little infants who within like the first couple days of life are being strapped down, restrained, held down, and then having the most sensitive part of their body, which is their foreskin, cut off without any kind of anesthesia and any kind of pain relief. And when that happens in the body of a baby boy, the imprint that is created into their genitals, into their penis specifically, is one of non-consent, one of force, one of manipulation, one of coercion, one of deep sexual violence and wounding. One, I would also say too, of like horrendous embarrassment, right? Having your legs strapped down, held open, while adults, specifically medical professionals, people that you are meant to be able to trust in, are violating the most sacred part of your body, the most sensitive part of your body, and imprinting that understanding of your sexual nature into your penis, which is the most penetrative part of the male body. It's the most yang part of the male body, which means that it is the part of the body that extends outward into the world. And so, how a man is relating to his genitals, specifically to his penis, is going to determine his ability to charge forward into the world and penetrate life, right? And so the first thing that I would suggest to men in the shift around rape culture is first and foremost recognize the trauma that circumcision has created in your body. Recognize the fractures that that has created between you and your parents, specifically your mother, because for a baby boy, the mother is that child's first territory. For women, for little baby girls, our territory is not our mother, but for men it is, because men experience their territory externally. And the first territory that they are attached to is the territory of their mother and their mother's body and their mother's warmth and comfort and nurturance. And so there's a deep wounding that occurs when a young boy is circumcised with his mother, because he's essentially saying, you're the only home I've ever known. You're the only safety I've ever known. You're the only stability structure. You're the only voice that I've ever known for these 9 months in between the world of the spirit realm and the world of this physical realm, right? Like that gestational space of the womb. You were my home. You were my territory. You were my safety. And you allowed this to happen to me, right? You allowed me to be sexually violated. And then there's also a deep wounding with the father, as well, because a lot of men, the reason that they'll circumcise their boys is because they want their boys' genitalia to look the same as them. And so it's a deep, unhealed circumcision wound that fathers pass down to their sons and to their sons and to their sons around the sexual trauma that they created that they haven't healed, and so they continue to pass it down. And so there's that schism with the father wound as well of like, why would you subject me to this violence that you yourself hold? And it's because they're not conscious of the violence that it has created in their body. And so for us to really talk about like, we need to shift rape culture, we need to end rape culture, we need to talk about rape culture, we need to change it. So much of it comes down to men healing from their circumcision trauma and for coming to peace with their mothers and their fathers and their parents, the medical providers that allowed this to happen, and to essentially come into coherence with the understanding that sexual violence has occurred to them at a very young age, that that has been their imprinting of understanding what it is to relate to the world from this place in their genitals, and that it then informs all of the ways in which they embody not only their masculine power in the world, but also the way in which they are relating with others, predominantly the way that they're relating with the women that they are being sexually and romantically intimate with. And so all of that is essentially to say that, when men heal their circumcision trauma, it also helps them develop deeper empathy and deeper compassion for other sexual abuse survivors, because it's no longer something that happens to someone else. It's something that has happened to you, that you have alchemized and sat with and healed and come to peace with in whatever way possible. And maybe it's not possible in this lifetime. I don't know what it's like to be a man who has been circumcised. I don't know what it's like to have that relationship with my genitalia, but at least to have the consciousness of the rape imprint that has been placed inside of your relationship with your body and your sexuality, and to find ways to transform it so that it doesn't continue on in the way that you are relating with women. All right, moving on to number 2, second direct action that men can take to shift rape culture. And this is a big one that I have spoken about over the past few episodes, and it's something I'm going to keep speaking about, which is engagement with pornography and the sex industry at large. And as I've said on a couple of the past episodes, is that I recognize that most young boys are being non-consensually exposed to pornography at a very young age. I recognize that most of the time they're being exposed to it by another boy or potentially a man. So, like a brother, a cousin. Sometimes they stumble upon it like their dad's, Playboy stash under the bed or in the closet, or, finding something on someone's phone. But I recognize that the vast majority of young boys who are exposed to pornography, it's something that has happened non-consensually to them. And so there is then, again, a sexual violation that our young boys are going through, where they're seeing something that they know in their spirit, like, this is far beyond my developmental capacity. This is far beyond my understanding of like how men and women relate to one another. And there's also something visually stimulating, because for men, sex is a significantly more visual act than it is for women. For us, it's much more auditory. And so visually, it's stimulating very intense parts of the brain. It's stimulating the dopamine and serotonin receptors. It's creating addictive loops in the body. And there's also this feeling of like something is wrong here, but there is an erotic charge within my genitalia and what's being communicated to my brain. And so there's shame there around the eroticism that is being cultivated in the bodies and in the brains and in the spirits of young boys. And because there is all of this shame being mixed with our sexual life force energy, boys then go on to often expose that to other boys. And it's a way of them essentially trying to work out the trauma imprint of sexual violation, of being exposed to something that was beyond their developmental capacity. And they share that with other boys. And it's just this almost this hazing ritual that I see, this sexual hazing ritual among boys, that it is so normalized. And then you grow up, you become an adult, you're relating to women in real life in the way that you have seen on the screen. And when we're talking about what's happening on the screen, we're talking about predominantly people who have been trafficked into the sex industry, survivors of childhood sexual abuse, survivors of sexual abuse throughout adolescent or young adulthood, who have been targeted and specifically trafficked because of the sexual wounding that they carry. And so, what we're seeing on the screen when we're engaging with pornography is a reenactment and a re-victimization of predominantly childhood sexual abuse survivors. And so, men are learning to connect their erotic nature with abuse, with violence, and it ties into what happened when they were exposed to pornography as young boys, right? Child sexual abuse in all of its different flavors. And so then men are coming to the women that they are now sexually intimate with as teenagers and as young adults and even into their adulthood with that imprinting. And they have this pornography programming moving through their brains because it literally affects different parts of the brain. It's impacting the ability to be fully present with a woman, and it's also impacting the ability to get hard, the ability to ejaculate, the ability to be like in this realm with your woman. Like there's like a part of your spirit that when you're engaging with sexuality after consuming so much pornography, it's stuck in that underworld of childhood sexual violation that you personally experienced, but then what all pornography, I can't even call them porn actors, right? I don't even know what you would call them, but people who have been trafficked into the porn industry, that is the energy that you are coming to sexuality with. And so, what I would say is if you want to shift rape culture, you have to stop watching porn cold turkey, no more, never again. It has to be a really clear deal that you make with yourself, that you make with your ancestors, that you make with your future descendants, that you make with the men around you, and that you make with God, creator, source, spirit, higher power, whatever you want to call it, that says, I will not participate in the ongoing re-victimization of child sexual abuse survivors. I will not be involved in this anymore. I will not allow my life force energy to be channeled in that direction. I will not allow my sexuality to be siphoned from me as a man. My sexual life force energy is sacred, it is valuable, and it is only meant to be shared with someone who I deeply love, deeply respect, deeply care for, deeply value, and that I want to be able to be fully present and available for the connection that I am continuously cultivating with her through sexual union. With that, also comes the unshaming around it, right? This is why I'm speaking so openly about pornography these days, is because sexual abuse in any capacity is going to create this deep, deep, deep layer of shame within us, which is what keeps us circling in the spiral, right? So I'll be transparent. I watched pornography when I was younger. I don't even know how I got into it. I think I got into it because of my first serious boyfriend, actually. And I think most people have engaged with pornography. I think it's very rare to find someone who hasn't. So I can speak to you honestly and say, yes, I've totally watched porn. And yes, when I was able to take consciousness of how damaging it was for me and for my relationships, I had a hard boundary with it, right? And so I would say come to your male friends and speak to them about this and what is going on with you. If you don't have male friends that you can talk to about that, go find men who are talking about this openly and speak on it and release the shame around it so that it doesn't keep spiraling you in this way. Because when you normalize the healing of it, you take away the shame and the, how to say, it's like a death grip on your throat and on your stomach and on your genitals and on your life force energy when you speak on it openly with other men who have moved through the similar processes. You have support around that, right? And it becomes less of a dirty little secret and more of something that you are taking consciousness of, and you are shifting, and you are taking control over as a man. You're saying, I'm developing the sexual discipline to value my energy, to value my body, to value my sexuality, my intimacy, my eroticism, and I don't allow it to be hijacked anymore. All right, number 3, direct action for what men can do to shift rape culture. And this is a big one, which is take inventory of your relationship with substances. And when I say substances, I say, alcohol, weed, different illicit drugs, vaping, junk food, video gaming, etc. Anything that is like an addictive tendency for you, anything that you feel like you're utilizing to move into an altered state of consciousness to take you away from reality, just do some inventory check-in around that, right? Because what I can say around sexuality as a woman and what I've observed with men is that starting in our teenage years, we are taught to come to sex from an altered state of consciousness. And to be clear, sex is already an altered state of consciousness. Our brain is already in like a totally different state. But when we are teenagers and we're going to parties, and that's like the first time that we're able to start like hooking up with people and exploring sexually, oftentimes we're doing it quite drunk or quite high. And what I personally feel as someone who cut out substances a very long time ago, specifically alcohol when I was like in my early 20s, is that it is a numbing agent. One, it numbs us from our bodies. It quite literally desensitizes us. And so the sex that we're having when we're drunk is actually quite, it's like gray. I don't know how to describe it because we're not actually feeling everything that's going on in our bodies. But also, I would say one of the big reasons that I decided to stop drinking was because I didn't like what I was allowing other people to do to me when I was drunk, right? And there's many different gray areas around consent that we can say. That I have experienced like objective rape many times, but I've also experienced many gray areas where I've been able to say to myself, had I not been drunk, I wouldn't have agreed to that thing, right? And it's not explicitly the man's fault who, I'm saying this in quotes, like did that to me, because I'm an adult and I have to take responsibility for the fact that I was going out, getting drunk, and like doing my thing and getting freaky with people who I shouldn't have been getting freaky with because there was no respect there. I didn't respect them. They didn't respect me. I didn't respect myself enough to understand how disembodied I was when I was having sex while being drunk or while being high. And so, what I would say to men is take inventory around what your relationship is with substances, with altered states of consciousness, the ways in which you are utilizing it to escape the responsibility of being clear and coherent and sober and present in the reality of everyday life. Do that for like at least 30 days. Like cut out all substances and see what happens in your life. If you can cut it out for 90 days, even better, right? To just see what cloud of disconnection you have been living under by utilizing all of these different substances. And the reason for this is that we as women, I'm speaking to you now really as a woman specifically, we, I, need our warriors to be sober and centered. We need our warriors to have regulated nervous systems that are not dependent on external sources of regulation. We need you to be in touch with your bodies and your spirits and your sensations and your feelings through movement, through meditation, through breath work, through music, through art making, through cooking, through time in nature, through things that make you feel, right? Feel your body. I know that this is why so many men like love going to the gym. They love feeling their body and what their body is capable of. And I know it's so regulating for you guys. And so we need you to develop all of the nervous system regulation tools that you possibly can so that you're not outsourcing it to substances that take you away from your center and that often land you in situations where you're with a woman in an altered state of consciousness. She's in an altered state. And things happen that neither of you really wanted to happen because I know how much it damages a man to experience sexual union with a woman and afterwards to learn that she's saying it was non-consensual. One of the biggest ways that you can avoid that, stop having sex while drunk, stop having sex while high, right? Like really get clear about why you're coming into sexual union and your ability to be fully present with it and available with that woman. All right, number 4. Direct action, what men can do to shift rape culture. Get trained in combat sports. I know that men, as I mentioned, love to be physical. I know you love being in your bodies. I know you love going to the gym, and that's awesome. And what I would also say about this, I know a lot of men right now are like very worried about their testosterone levels, which there's so many layers to that that I'm not going to speak to in this episode. But in terms of your testosterone levels, one of the best ways to raise your testosterone levels is to be in healthy competition with other men. One of the ways you can do this is by getting trained in combat sports, right? So we're talking about boxing, martial arts, jujitsu, karate, taekwondo, whatever, Muay Thai, like learning how to activate your inner warrior around other warriors. And like the reason that I feel that this is so important, there's a couple of reasons. One, when you're regularly fighting and competing against other men, it's raising your testosterone levels, which allows you to activate your inner warrior when the need for protecting more vulnerable people comes up. The defense of women, children, and elders needs to be activated through your healthy testosterone levels. Another thing that I would say about why I think men learning combat sports is really healthy and important is that women feel safe around men who have taken time to apprentice to their inner killer, their inner predator, and develop healthy control over it, right? I can say as a woman, I actually don't feel safe around men who have not come to peace and acceptance around the fact that physically they are capable of killing, right? In a way that women and children and elders don't have as much access to because we're not physically as strong as you. And so for me, I actually feel significantly safer around a man who knows and who has the capacity to kill and who is clear on that and who has taken the time to discipline that part of himself so that it's not running out of control and that it can be utilized only when it is like really necessary to bring the warrior self out, to bring the killer out, and to defend his territory, right? And when I speak to his territory, I'm speaking to the women that he cares for, the children that he cares for, the elders that he cares for, right? When you're training, do it with the pure intention to protect the vulnerable members of your community, right? When you're training in that way, you are cultivating your testosterone and channeling it towards a very clear goal, which is to step into the protector archetype that we really, really need right now. The last thing that I will speak to in terms of direct actions that men can do is going to be join or create a men's group. And I spoke to this a little bit about pornography, but I think it goes so much bigger than that, which is that when you come together with other men who are doing this work, it feels a lot less lonely. When you come together to do this work with other men, it shifts the culture deeply because it's no longer just you individually talking about to yourself, essentially, or to a therapist about what's going on, but talking to the men in your community about their own fears, their own wounding, their own pain, their own suffering, their own questions, their own doubts, and recognizing that you're not alone in this, and also recognizing that together you are significantly stronger as well. And so either join a men's group, there's lots of in-person ones, there's lots of online ones, or create a men's group with the guys in your circle, right? And make a commitment to get together with other men on a regular basis, at least 2 times a month. Get on Zoom for an hour or 2 hours every other week, right? And hold each other to very high standards of masculinity. When you come together, do this sober, do this in a way that gets to like the actual core of the issues. Don't bullshit, don't talk around stuff, like be real. I know that men are actually oftentimes a lot realer than women. And that's one of the reasons that I love men. Like sometimes I'll go to women and ask their opinion about stuff and they'll be like really soft and gentle with me. And then I'll take the same question to a man and he'll just be like, no, fuck that. This is what's going on. And like, sorry if it hurts your feelings, but this is the truth. Do that with each other. Bring each other into the circle, into the fire, and say, okay, how are we actually doing? What's really going on? And allow spaciousness for people to say, I'm really struggling with my relationship with porn. I'm really struggling with alcohol right now. I had a terrible fight with my girlfriend and I feel like I'm an asshole, but I also feel quite disrespected and devalued and I don't know what to do about it. I'm really fucking angry at my dad, right? Like he just did not create a model of masculinity for me. I still hold hatred towards my mom for allowing me to be circumcised. Like, allow those conversations to come up and to be held because the reality is that women can't hold that for you, and you don't want us to hold that for you, right? It's something that I know men have a hard time going to women and allowing us in this level of depth and vulnerability because you don't want us to see you as weak. You need men to go to for like the really in-depth parts of it. And then you need good, solid female relationships, either with your, intimate partnerships or friendships, or with your mothers or with your sisters where you can talk about stuff. But there is a level of holding that we can't do for you. That's not our job. And so that is just to say you need men who can really hold you in it, who can really sustain you, who can really support you. You need good brothers, you need good father figures and uncle figures and grandfather figures. And I know it's really hard to find that, but if I, as a woman, can find that in my different circles of women, I know that men can create that. I know that they can do it. I know that they can cultivate it if they pour their hearts into it, if they see how valuable it is, if they know how important it is. And so, as a woman, in sharing all of this with you, these direct actions, right? I really do encourage you. I offer you my deepest care, my deepest reverence, my deepest support, my deepest love in the work that you do with all of this information moving forward. And then I know I said that there were 5 direct actions, but I have one last one for you, which is if you want to shift rape culture and if you want to understand how to truly embody your masculinity in a loving and healthy way, come to the free co-ed class that I am teaching next week. It's going to be on Wednesday, May 20th, 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. It will be recorded if you can't make it live. Come to that class. Bring your brothers to that class. Bring yourself into a space with other men and women who are talking about these kinds of things, who are praying for one another, who are wanting to shift the culture, who are wanting to relate more lovingly with one another. Your presence in this class would be an unbelievable gift, I know, not just for myself, but for the other women present to recognize, wow, there are men who give a shit. There are men who love and care for women. There are men who want to support women. There are men who want to understand themselves better. There are men who want to grow and evolve and transform and change. Your presence in that space alone would be deeply, deeply healing for everyone else there. And so that is my last direct action that I will offer to the good, kind, loving, sweet, respectful, powerful men, reverent, devoted, committed men who want to shift rape culture. I really, really hope to see you there. I will put the link in the show notes for you to join. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. I hope to see you at my class next week, The Current State of Men and Women, Why Relating Feels So Hard. It is free. It is co-ed. Yes, there will be class replays available. Until then, take care of yourselves. Ciao, ciao. Mm-hmm.